The horrible life of pirates. The sea was never kind, not to the men who lived upon it, and least of all, to those who called themselves pirates. To the world, they were painted as swashbuckling adventurers, daring rogues with quick swords and quicker wit. But the truth stank like the bilge water at the bottom of their ship, sour and thick with rot. The truth was hunger, disease, and endless toil under the unforgiving sun, with the salt wind cutting their faces like knives. Life aboard a pirate ship began in misery and ended, more often than not, in misery. Some ended it with a rope around their neck, swaying on a gallows before a jeering crowd. Others ended it in the belly of the sea, swallowed whole when their ships splintered against reefs or were torn apart by storms. Few died peacefully, and even fewer died rich. The promise of gold and freedom was the bait, but the reality was hardship and horror. The pirates' food was no feast of roasted meats or tropical fruit, as the songs might say. Most days it was hardtack, flour, and water baked into a brick like biscuit. If fresh, it was tasteless. If old, which it almost always was, it swarmed with weevils. A man could crack his teeth trying to bite into it. Yet the pirates ate, not because it was good, but because it was that or nothing. Salt pork and dried fish, tough as leather, were the other staples. Fresh food rarely lasted more than a few days, and fresh water turned brackish in the casks after weeks at sea. Men fought over the rare bits of lemon or lime they captured from coastal raids, not because they enjoyed them, but because scurvy was the silent killer aboard every ship. Gums rotted, teeth loosened, and wounds refused to heal. More men died of it than from sword fights or cannon fire. To be a pirate was to eat badly, drink worse, and slowly watch one's body weaken with every voyage. The ship itself was a floating prison of filth. Rats nested in the hold, gnawing at whatever stores remained. Fleas and lice infested every hammock, biting into skin until men scratched themselves bloody. The stench of unwashed bodies mixed with tar, sweat, and stagnant water. Pirates rarely bathed. There was no time, no fresh water to spare, and no place for privacy. Wounds festered quickly. A cut from a rope or a splinter could swell into an infection that killed. Surgeons were rare, and when one was present, he was more butcher than healer. His tools were crude, a rusty saw, a dirty knife, a bottle of rum to dull the pain. Amputation was the only answer for gangrene. Men held down their shipmates while the surgeon cut, their screams echoing louder than the gulls. Venereal disease also plagued the crew. Pirates who came ashore often spent their stolen coin in brothels, only to return to sea with more than they bargained for. The sickness spread through the ship, leaving men fevered and weak, their bodies wasting away. When storms came, there was no escape. The black sky rolled over the waves, lightning splitting the heavens. The ship pitched and groaned as the sea tried to tear it apart. Men climbed the rigging, their hands raw from the ropes, while rain blinded them and the wind howled so loudly they could not hear their own voices. One slip meant death, swallowed by the sea, never to be seen again. Even in fair weather, the sea offered no comfort. Days stretched endlessly, with the horizon the same in every direction. The sun burned skin to leather. Salt crusted on eyebrows and lips. Men grew restless, tempers flared, and fights broke out over the smallest things. A stolen ration, a careless word, even a glance held too long. Knives flashed in the dark, and sometimes a body was tossed overboard quietly, with no questions asked. The captain of a pirate ship was often chosen by the crew, but his rule was absolute in times of battle. Discipline was harsh and punishment cruel. A thief might have his nose or ears cut off. A mutineer could be marooned, left on an empty island with nothing but a bottle of water and a pistol, the barrel loaded with a single bullet. Death came slow from thirst, hunger, or madness, unless he chose the quicker end. Other punishments were worse. Keel hauling, where a man was tied with rope and dragged beneath the ship's barnacle-crusted hull. Left flesh torn from bone, few survived it. Flogging was common, the whip biting into skin, until the back was nothing but welts and blood. Men bore scars as badges, though none were proud to have earned them. The tale spoke of treasure-laden ships, easy to capture. In reality, sea battles were chaos and horror. Cannons roared, splinters flew like arrows, and men screamed as iron tore through flesh. Smoke choked the deck, gunpowder stung the eyes and lungs. Boarding was worse, hand-to-hand combat with pistols, cutlasses, and axes. The deck ran slick with blood, and the cries of the wounded echoed even after the fighting ended. Victory brought loot, yes, but often less than the men had hoped. Merchants sometimes carried little of value. The gold and jewels of legend were rare. More often, the pirates found barrels of sugar, bales of cloth, or crates of tobacco. These had value, but they were not the riches of dreams. And defeat. Defeat meant capture. Pirates were hated by every nation. When caught, they were dragged in chains to the nearest port. Trials were swift, and sentences brutal. Men were hanged in groups, their bodies left to rot as a warning to others. Some begged for mercy, some cursed their captors, but all died the same way, the ropes snapping their necks or choking them slowly before a crowd that cheered. Men turned to piracy because they were desperate. Sailors fleeing harsh Navy discipline, criminals avoiding the law, or laborers with no land and no prospects. They were promised freedom, a chance to share and plunder as equals. And indeed, pirate codes often divided loot more fairly than navies or merchant ships. But equality did not make life less horrible. Hunger, disease, storms, and violence were shared equally as well. Freedom on the sea was an illusion. Pirates lived by theft, and theft demanded constant risk. Every sunrise was a gamble. Would they see the next? Few pirates grew old. Those who did often ended in poverty, broken men with missing limbs, blinded eyes, or empty pockets. Imagine a pirate's day. He wakes on damp planks, scratching at flea bites. His stomach growls as he gnaws on a biscuit hard as stone, spitting out weevils as best he can. He drinks from a cup of foul water, holding his nose against the taste. He spends hours hauling ropes, patching sails, scrubbing decks, sweating under the sun. His hands blister, his back aches, and salt burns in every cut. At night, he lies in a hammock that stinks of mildew, listening to the snores and coughs of his shipmates, wondering if the ship will hold another week. He dreams of gold, but wakes to the same misery. The horrible life of pirates was not filled with romance or adventure. It was hunger gnawing at the belly, disease eating the flesh, the sea always threatening, and death waiting at every turn. It was a life that promised freedom, but delivered chains, whether from the gallows or the endless toil of survival. They were feared, yes, but behind the fear was pity, for no man would live such a life unless he had no other choice. And so the pirates sailed, ragged, desperate, and doomed, chasing treasures they would never hold, until the sea or the hangman claimed them.